Hi, I'm Lonnie Ward. Over the past 15 years, I've worked in countries battling extreme poverty, meeting incredible people, and learning life-changing lessons. Now, I'm here to share their stories and a few of my own with you. I can't wait to take you along. Water thundered over Grand Falls in a powerful, muddy rush. The roar was so loud it felt like the land itself was trembling. Towering brown water crashed over the edge and into the canyon below. It was an awe-inspiring sight, powerful, wild, and humbling. This was my second time visiting Grand Falls. The first time, the falls were completely dry. The rock formations alone were impressive enough, but compared to the living, roaring version I was now witnessing, it was almost unrecognizable. Seeing it come to life changed everything. It wasn't just a place, it was a force. My connection to this part of Arizona began in 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. News had reached us of the devastation on the Navajo Nation. The infection rate was high, but what shocked us most was the mortality rate. 25% of those who contracted the virus were dying. The numbers were staggering, heartbreaking, and unacceptable. An organization called Building Communities reached out to us asking for help. Their mission focused on rebuilding and strengthening communities, especially in areas hit hardest by poverty, isolation, and now a pandemic. They reached out hoping we could support their efforts alongside a local organization, Navajo Thaw, to help improve conditions in the area. We didn't hesitate. We packed up and headed south. We pulled into Tuba City, Arizona. That's where we met Thomas So. Thomas was one of those rare people who instantly makes you feel like you belong. He was cheerful, welcoming, and passionate about helping his people. He became our guide, our mentor, and our friend. He showed us the world beyond the headlines, the long-standing struggles that made the Navajo Nation so vulnerable. In many of the rural western regions, there was no access to running water, no electricity. Dirt roads wound through the vast plains, connecting small farms and families separated by miles. These weren't just remote conditions. They were the product of decades of restriction. The area we were in had been part of what is known as the Bennett Freeze. From the late 1960s until 2009, residents were prohibited from building or improving their homes because of a land dispute between the Hopi and Navajo tribes. The federal government imposed the freeze, effectively halting all development for nearly 40 years. The impact was devastating. Generations grew up without the infrastructure that most Americans take for granted: clean water, heat, safe roads, and electricity. Even after the freeze was lifted, the damage lingered. It's not easy to rebuild when you're starting from behind and can't even own the land your house sits on. On the reservation, land is federally owned and only leased to tribal members. That makes it extremely difficult to get building loans or launch businesses. Our initial work was focused on delivering food. Fresh produce was almost non-existent. Many families had to drive long distances to get clean water, often to a chapter house or a shared spigot miles away. We met with families living in the Loop area, and it was during one of these food deliveries that our local guide, Kenny, said, "You've got to see this," and took us to Grand Falls for the first time. There were a couple of shade structures for tourists and plaques explaining the lava flows that had shaped the falls. The river dropped suddenly and dramatically into the Little Colorado River Gorge, which eventually winds its way into the Grand Canyon. It was stunning. But even with all the beauty, life was undeniably hard. Most people raised sheep or cattle, relying on the sparse desert grasslands to keep their animals alive. In the summer, the vegetation dried up completely. Many families had to bring in hay, sometimes from hundreds of miles away. Winters were no easier. Nothing grew, so they brought in more hay then also. And yet, in spite of all the hardship, there was grace. There was generosity. The people we met welcomed us with open arms. They shared stories of their history, the Navajo code talkers, whose bravery helped win World War II. Elders told us about the long walk, when soldiers, led by Kit Carson, drove the Navajo people from their land to camps in New Mexico, only to realize too late they didn't have the supplies to keep them alive. So they made them walk back. Thousands died along the way, first on the journey out, and then again on the journey home. And when they returned, everything had been burned. Still, they rebuilt. Thomas helped us understand all of this. He gave us the context we needed to not just see, but feel the depth of what these communities had endured. He worked tirelessly, organizing, advocating, teaching. And then, like so many others, he succumbed to COVID-19. His loss was devastating. We connected with other strong, capable leaders like Marilyn Reed, Jonathan Yazzie, and Robert Black. With their help, we began to build hoop house greenhouses, structures tough enough to withstand the high desert winds and the frigid winters. Families began growing fresh produce, and often enough to share or even sell at the markets. These weren't just gardens. They were sources of hope, health, and self-reliance. And the generosity of the Navajo people shone through. Neighbors shared their harvests freely, offering what little they had to anyone in need. A couple of years later, I returned to Grand Falls with a volunteer team from a company, Grandeur Peak. We were helping more families build greenhouses. One of the families lived just a couple of miles from the falls, and I couldn't wait to show the volunteers this natural wonder. But when we turned off the main road, we were met with large plywood signs. No trespassing. No access to Grand Falls. Do not enter. I was stunned. I asked our employee, Allison, what had happened. He explained that tourists had trashed the area, turned it into a dumping ground. The local families were tired of cleaning up after others, so they shut it down, completely and permanently. No exceptions. I was frustrated. Grand Falls was such a potential resource, an attraction that could bring in visitors, money, opportunity. I thought, why not use this? Why not build something around it? But then I realized that wasn't what the families wanted. Their strength wasn't in tourism. Their passion wasn't in managing outsiders or keeping up with garbage left behind. They didn't want to deal with it, so they closed it off. From an outsider's perspective, it seemed short-sighted. But then I thought about my own life. How many opportunities had I walked away from because they were inconvenient? How many times had I closed a door rather than deal with a challenge? It gave me pause. It made me think about one of our organization's core values, helping people recognize and use their own resources. But the truth is, sometimes people know their resources and choose not to use them. And that's valid. Not every path needs to be taken just because it's available. Still, I can't help but feel frustrated by the bigger picture. The injustice of the federal government retaining ownership over land that should belong to the Navajo people. The fact that families can't get loans or build freely. Even with the Bennett freeze lifted, the long-term damage remains. You can't undo 40 years of suppression overnight. The government tries to help by throwing money at the problem, but that rarely works. The Navajo people value consensus. Decisions take time, conversation, and cooperation. But with so many intersecting problems, consensus is hard to reach. So often, nothing gets done. It is a heartbreaking cycle. Still, I hold on to hope. I hope that thoughtful, collaborative people, Navajo and non-Navajo, can come together and open new paths, that they can empower families and communities to thrive on their own terms. And I hope that places like Grand Falls, those stunning, sacred places, can one day be shared again, carefully, respectfully, and on the community's own terms. Because the beauty here, both in the land and in its people, is worth protecting and worth lifting up. When I think of the future of the Navajo Nation, the challenges, the resilience, the potential, I keep coming back to Thomas. He embodied what true leadership looks like, not flashy, not political, just deeply committed to his people. He listened, he taught, he gave everything he had to lift others. If there were more Thomases, people rooted in the culture, trusted by their communities, and determined to build a better future from within, then real, lasting change would not only be possible, it would be inevitable. It's people like Thomas who remind me that hope doesn't come from distant policies or quick fixes. It comes from those who, like a steady river, carve a path through stone with quiet persistence. The more who follow that path, the deeper it becomes, until the current grows stronger, the progress faster, and one day it spills over into something powerful, something breathtaking, like Grand Falls itself.
Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who'd love these stories too. To learn more or connect with me, visit lonnieward.com. Until next time, be the change.